Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Why I Left podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Noah Scott. Noah is the founder and CEO of The Big Possible, where he creates immersive in-person experiences to empower leaders to take bigger risks, find peace of mind, and create memories and bonds that transcend limitations. His eclectic background in marketing, design, film, and entrepreneurship has made him an ideal sounding board for any stage of the entrepreneur's journey. Let's go check out his story. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Noah Scott. Noah's story is one of exploration and determination. As a global traveler, having visited over 40 countries, he's deeply motivated by the human experience and has spent over a decade mastering the art of connection. A serial entrepreneur, he joined the Great Resignation after realizing where his talents and passion met. Many of our guests have openly discussed overcoming fear and the importance of having strong support systems. So I wanted him to join the program to discuss his journey, risk-taking, and building a vision for your life and career, along with some ways on how you can build deeper connections. So I'm excited to have him on the show. So hi, Noah. How you doing? Hey, brother. What is happening? Nothing much. It's really good to have you on the show and really get to chat. There's so much going on with your background. I'm glad we were able to get connected. And as you know, this show is, we talk a little bit about, the Great Resignation and things like that, and we'll get to it. But before we, kind of go that route, would love to learn a little bit more about you. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your background.
Yeah. So well, it's interesting because I'm currently living this like digital nomad life where I'm bouncing around all these different countries. But I grew up in a small resort town called Palm Springs, which is random. When I say I grew up there, people are like, what? Like people live there? And, but it was pretty epic because every day I'd be able to go out, climb in the mountains, catch lizards, build forts in the desert. And that experience, I think, really was something that I'm very fortunate to have. I've always been adventurous. I've always been somebody that enjoys going out and being in nature. And all of that, I think, throughout the journey of life has been a theme of mine. I've always been somewhat of a risk taker. I've always started cool projects. I've always been tinkering. And so, flash forward, I spent my 20s basically as a delinquent. I had a decade of just going to parties, seeking validation from, some important people, trying to be a model, starting some random companies that just didn't work. And, I ended that decade with nothing to show. And I just remember getting out of a really tough breakup. For me, I think the only reason it was tough because I had like a very low self-esteem at the time. And so my whole worth was tied up in this girl, then I had to go find that worth again. And so what I did is I just sold everything and I went on a trip and I walked across Japan. Very impulsive, but 500 kilometers of walking with a backpack will eventually, it might take some time, but eventually you'll find something of meaning inside you. And being alone with nature and that journey, it took me a couple of months of like getting beat around, soaked in rain, blisters on my feet. And one day I was just like, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to host experiences where people can gather. Back then, the vision was having like a cool boutique hotel and like a media company. I did the media company right when I got back to LA, but the boutique hotel has always sat like on this back burner. Like one day I'll get to that. One day I'll get to that. And one day it took me 10 more years before I actually started doing that. And, in the process, there's all these other things like doing a film company, getting a full-time job, but we'll get into all that. But yeah, I think for me, adventure, community has always been one of the most important things to just keep me happy and motivated.
Oh, definitely. And so what are some of the things that you have been passionate about professionally?
Creativity is probably the biggest. creativity and the impact that we can make by thinking outside of the box and realizing that as an individual, we're capable of making an impact in the world. So often we feel like we are powerless, that there's really not much we can do. You know, we show up at our job, we feel like the tasks that we're given aren't meaningful. And it can be really intimidating to look at everyone else out there that's doing cool things. You see like organizations, you see big entrepreneurs that are showcasing all the cool projects that they're working on. And sometimes, you know, we're stuck filing some paperwork, or we're stuck like editing some like boring video for work. And these moments, it can be really difficult to find the creativity in them. But if we can somehow figure out that the things that we're working on are related to our own growth, even as boring as they might be, but if we can find a way to look at it creatively and see, how can I gain some skills through this? How can I use this to expand my leverage so that I'll be able to do bigger things in the future? So for me professionally, I love design. I love art. I love the aspect of building a brand. And this is one of the things I help a lot of people do, is figure out what their brand voice is, what are the things that they really stand for, and how they can tie their daily actions into building a life that supports that vision. So yeah, for me, thinking creatively, finding ways to add meaning to the stuff that you do every day, that this is what drives me.
No, that's awesome. And that also takes, like, when you're in those types of roles, those little boring, mundane tasks, it's really about a mindset shift in how you make those things work for you. So I love that you mentioned that. And so now, as you were mentioning, you know, look, you have a really wide ranging background. And so tell us a little bit about your work journey and what's worked well in the environments that you found yourself a part of.
Looking back, so before I started my production company in my 30s, like right when I hit 30, I had a string of failures professionally. You know, I had a modeling career that just was wasting my time, basically. I had a fashion line that I launched that ultimately I didn't know what I was doing. It was cool, and I had a fashion show, and I was using MySpace. Like, that dates me how old I was.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, I sold through a bunch of t-shirts. I had a fashion show, and at the end of the day, I didn't even remember what platform I was using to do this, but like, it was a cool website. And, you know, ultimately I was selling things for cheaper than it cost me to make them. And so that's just not a sustainable business model. And then, you know, I had a soap company that I did with my dad that was really enjoyable. It brought me a lot of pleasure. We would make soap in his on his ranch back in Nevada, in the middle of nowhere, and then we'd sell soap at farmers markets. That was really cool. It was like Tyler Durden style, you know, but
oh, nice. Yeah.
I enjoyed that. And one day I'll go back to making like a luxury bath line, but that's on the back burner for sure. And, you know, none of these really worked out. And I think ultimately it was my lack of experience plus lack of runway. You think of the biggest reason why so many entrepreneurs fail is ultimately the lack of capital. They run out of juice. There's no more gas in the tank, because they either make a lot of dumb mistakes, or they just haven't figured out what that product market fit is, and they just don't know how to get enough customers in the door. So that was me back then. Then we started the production company, and you know, I was struggling at the beginning. I was like, how do we make this work? Like, we did this thing where we were making short films for actors, and I just remember my buddy came by, he then became my co-founder, but we just built a list of emails from this actors database. There were just thousands of actors on there that were like, you know, trying to get auditions. So they had these profiles, and their email was on the profile. So we just grabbed like thousands of emails. We would sit there at night grabbing the emails, and we just sent out this offer in email. Like, hey, we're doing demo reels for actors. And, you know, this is the price. It was super cheap. And there was nobody doing this back then either. So we were booked. After that point, it was just like, we had so much content, we had so much business, and it was just a consistent flow of people coming in. Word started getting out. And then eventually, you know, once you have that foundation and you have enough momentum, it becomes a lot easier to then get the next clients. It's just that really crossing that first bridge from obscurity into where people are starting to talk about you. And, you know, that business, I think the same problem happened. once there was more competition popping up, we started making dumb decisions like expanding. I always take on more projects than I can chew. I get this like ADHD, like, oh, let me now try this. Let me now try this. And so we started a feature film. We poured all of our money into this feature film. That was ultimately just like a massive time suck. I mean, if everyone's ever made a feature film, there's hundreds of hours that you need to put in, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars that you need to spend just to get the thing shot and edited and then distributed. But we got it done, and that was a really epic experience. We also like experimented in VR, which I just like wasted so much money. It was this fad that was showing up. Like, great, let me jump on this fad. Like, it's cool, right. But all of that ultimately kind of ran the business down the ground. Meanwhile, our competitors, they're just focusing on doing the day-to-day like short films for actors, and they were thriving. And we got to the point where I was done. It was like I didn't really care about the business anymore, and I was also like kind of afraid of the future. So I quit, and I just gave my shares to my partners, and I got a safe job at a marketing agency, which was one of the coolest things that I've done because it allowed me to learn. That, I think, is something that we often look at our jobs as penance or torture or some sort of prison. But that job, I was working directly with like one of the leading experts in marketing, producing content, and the amount of knowledge and experience that I gained from that has enabled me to see things more objectively, to be way more strategic with a lot of the initiatives that I put out now in my businesses. And it's because I went in with a beginner's mindset, knowing that, hey, I've just ran, a few businesses to the ground, basically. I mean, the production company is still thriving. Like, my partners are still doing well with that. But it was running me ragged. And that realization that I need to level up my skills and my knowledge brought me with that humility into this agency. And, I was there for 4 years, and I leveled up through that career. And eventually it got to the point where I think you start to get stagnant after a while. And for me, it's two things. Like, one, it's not fair to your employer when you're no longer fired up to be at the job. And two, it's not fair to yourself when you're not getting any more juice out of the experience. It's time to leave. And I knew that time had showed up, but it was, how do I comfortably make the leap? At this point, I've had years of being comfortable with a paycheck, and I'm like so paranoid of the risk now. Meanwhile, like, all my testosterone's disappeared because I'm just like doing the 9 to 5, and my social circle disappeared. But all of that fear kicked in to this point where I was paralyzed. Like, how do I actually leave? And so what happened was, throughout this time, like, I'm performing poorly at work because I'm not. I know this isn't what I want to do long term. Even if I really try, I'm not going to get there. And again, that's not fair to my boss. That's not fair to myself. So I kept trying all these little side projects. I started. I taught myself how to paint, and I held an art exhibit. I wrote and published a book. I started a coaching business. I started a candle company, and I was just searching for that thing that would hit. And it didn't come until I finished the book all the way. I signed my first few clients with coaching, that I realized what I was truly putting off was that vision I came up with 10 years ago, which was creating a community for people to come together, talk about business, and grow together. So that was when the Big Possible was born. And this is really my container to make an impact in the world, ultimately. If you think about what my mission is in life, my mission is to help the entrepreneurs, the innovators of the world, today's leaders, who for some way or another got shafted by circumstance, whether it's the mindset, the fear, whether it's just no knowledge or capital to launch their business, but to give these entrepreneurs and these innovators the leverage that they need in terms of relationships, counsel, guidance, give them that leverage so that they're able to thrive. And the Big Possible is basically the container to serve that mission. And so we do retreats around the world. We do like creative coaching. We do marketing services, and it's just been a blast.
No, that's awesome. That is really awesome. And yeah, we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about that shortly. I want to take you back though. Let's go a little back in time to March of 2020, right? Where COVID is now introduced to the world. And, who knows, everybody thought it was going to be a few weeks, but lo and behold, I mean, hell, by the time we're recording this, it's still kind of going on in the background, right? So talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected you.
Wow, talk about a life-changing moment for so many people. The pandemic, I think, had two things that really impacted me powerfully. One was inspiration and motivation. So seeing so many people leave their jobs, seeing so many people just like thrashed by a sudden change in the world gave me the motivation it lit a fire under my butt, to be frank. Like, I realized that I had some guidance to share. So that's when I wrote and published my book. It was like, okay, let's go. I'm in the house all day. Let's just finish this book. The other thing is it really made me think hard about what makes me happy and how can I design my life, think outside of the box, and create my life to question the assumptions that we have a set way of living and that we're trapped into living this whatever circumstance that we've been put in. And so the second thing that I did is I immediately questioned the circumstance. Do I need to be in Los Angeles, or can I actually just get up and live on the beach somewhere? Like, I'm stuck in these four walls. Wait a second, I'm working remote. All I need is my computer and internet. I can live anywhere in the world. This is what like makes me happy. Like, all this time I've been working so that I can one day go out and travel and see the world, make friends across the world. Why do I have to wait for someday? I can actually make that happen right now. So I subleased my apartment, and I just downsized as much as I could. And I went out and I did this like test run through Costa Rica and Mexico for like 3 or 4 months. And I absolutely loved it. Naturally, a lot of everything I do is I'm often acting before I really make a solid plan. So I was super naive. I'm just like, let's go. I thought I had everything prepared, but ultimately, there's a mental model that I love. It's called the map is not the territory. You can have the best plans, but reality is always going to be a much more vivid picture of what you've envisioned. So needless to say, I didn't plan it out well. I was bouncing around to all these different Airbnbs every week, and the packing in, packing out just exhausted me. So I had to come back to LA, resurface, and I had to think really hard about, do I want to continue this digital nomad life? Do I not? Meanwhile, I just was miserable with how LA was handling, with the whole mask thing, with the whole just quarantines, and I'm like, this is not the style of life that I want to live. 6 months of that, and I said, okay, digital nomad life, here we come. So yeah, those two things, like, one is it made me realize that we are here for a limited time on Earth, and so much can happen that we're not in control of. And so we can't wait for the perfect circumstances. We need to create, we need to publish whatever it is that we're working on to the world. And when there's an opportunity, we need to scrap whatever time that we can get out of that to make it happen. Whether that's a book that you're sitting on, whether that's a podcast that you're sitting on, the time is now. There's no better time to do that. And sometimes it takes a catastrophe to wake us up to realize that our time is limited. The other is question the assumptions. Just because the world is written a certain way doesn't mean you have to read the story that way. You can create whatever reality that you want by thinking outside of the box and designing that life for yourself.
Oh, I like that. And you were still, the job was in LA at the time when the pandemic started. And so really how did that, the shutdowns and everything really start to impact your relationship with that job? Because did you all go remote?
Everyone went remote. We were fortunate that we already had a sort of a semi-remote culture. So we had like three days in office, 2 days remote since I started there. So we were pretty much already positioned to make that pivot fairly easy. The management team was super, super supportive throughout that. I think one thing that was really cool about that company is like there was a lot of culture, and they valued the well-being, the mental well-being of everyone. So they were really, really supportive. I will say, like, I was a little like, because I was also at that point where I was still looking for the way out. So I'm seeing all my friends on fun employment, and like, I want that. Like, I'm still working. Yeah. And like, I just want to get that fun employment and go launch a business. But yeah, meanwhile, it's like, all right, let me take care of the responsibilities. And so I'm still very fortunate that I did have a job. I think, seeing so many people just basically lose their source of income overnight was a big motivator. But like, ultimately, I think in my circumstance, I was like, slightly envious.
Got it. No, I hear you. And so, as you mentioned, so you were in this last role for about 4.5 years, and you eventually decide to resign, in January of 22, right? And so ultimately, as the show notes, so why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
Yes. The reality, I was meant for more. And there's a ceiling as an employee. No matter how good of an employee you are, you're going to face a time when you plateau, whether that's through, now some people are perfectly suited to be in an organization and thrive. For me, I've always known that I'm an entrepreneur, that I love the autonomy of creating my own projects, of not having to get permission to launch an idea, of thinking outside of the box. With that comes a lot more risk, but the cards were stacked up where I knew I couldn't go back and get another job. It was just going to be jumping from one frying pan to another frying pan. And I had to face that reality that it's either now or never. Like, this is the opportunity to go out and take that risk. If I don't take that risk now, then I'm going to regret it for a long time. And the pandemic really gave me that wake up call that the world can change so much. And if you're dependent on an employer, they could just have a mood swing and you're fired. Like, there's no security in being an employee, in my opinion. There's no security in that. And there's no path to wealth. Like, I'm going to be capped, and I'm only going to make, a livable, manageable salary. Forget like retirement. Like, would I have to wait 40 years to live the life that I want to live? It just doesn't compute to me. And so the fear was the only thing holding me back. The fear of actually like knowing that I'm going to have to work hard. I love the work. That's the funny thing. Like, I absolutely love creating, and I love showing up, and I love building. When I'm building for somebody else and the vision isn't quite harmonious with like my inner mission, it creates some friction and resistance. So the tasks that show up, I'm not lit up to do them. It doesn't fulfill me. And at the beginning, there was the thirst to grow and learn and absorb. But eventually that thirst pivoted to like, I don't know, I was ready to go out and learn on my own. And finally it was just like, okay, this is the moment, Noah. You've got to take this moment. And it took me like a good solid year, right? Like, it was 2020 was a pandemic. It wasn't until like 2020, end of 2021, January 2022, that I finally did it. It was 2 years of going back and forth, like battling within my own head. How do I make the plan? How do I make the plan? And the first few plans didn't work out. I was trying to launch something on the side. And eventually it got to that point where I remember having a conversation with my coach, and it's like, this is a fire that you just have to jump into. Like, this is the moment. Like, you can't take any more baby steps. You just need to take the leap.
No, I love that. And so how did that decision now to finally take that leap, how did that impact you?
I've grown more in the last 8 months than I have in the last 5 years. Just in the relationships alone. So building a community-based business as an entrepreneur, I have now a team of advisors that are some of the world's like smartest people on my court, rooting for me. They're a text away. And this is all because I raised my banner into the world and I said, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm doing. And as you do that, you start to attract other people who support that vision. So the relationships are probably the biggest thing. My confidence is the other. Like, I'm so proud of the mission and every single tweak I make to the website, every single blog post I publish, every time I create a YouTube video, every time I post on social media, every time I finish a sales call or a podcast interview. All of that is like bricks on the foundation of the business that are going to stay with me for the next decade. And all of that effort, no one can take that away from me. Every time I learn as an entrepreneur, it all goes directly into the worth of the business. It's an empire that I own. And that's the beauty. It's not like when you're an employee, when you're working for someone else, you can have the most incredible, impactful day and you're building something for this employee. But the challenge is none of that is yours. It could all be gone tomorrow. The boss could fire you. Then what are you left with? Maybe a severance check if you're lucky. Maybe a referral to another job, something on your resume. Like, none of that is tangible. None of that is going to provide leverage for you to scale into the next level of your life. And there's the skills that you learn, which are powerful. And I think everyone needs to have enough skills so that they are able to thrive as an entrepreneur. But that's the beauty. Like, how did I level up from starting the business? This is the best decision I made in my life. The relationships alone have been some of the most impactful, the skills and the knowledge, but ultimately it's the power of the story that I'm building and the leverage that comes from creating all of the assets around your company. So all of the graphics, all of the photos, all of the footage, all of the content that now enables me to open whatever door I want. That enables me to attract customers. And who knows how far it's going to allow me to go. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so what are like let's say the top 3 things that you've learned about yourself throughout this process?
The first one is mindset is everything. And I can get very discouraged when I'm not seeing results. So I really need to keep a tight leash on my own habits because I'm the only one holding myself accountable right now. And the moment my mindset gets like screwed over by just seeing the writing on the wall that apparently, okay, I don't have sales coming in right now, or I'm not getting calls. These sort of there's like momentary results. They're not like long-term results. It's just like a short-term circumstance. These things can affect my mindset to the point where I see a task on a to-do list and I'm like, oh, this isn't going to solve this immediate problem of getting sales calls in the door. I should do something else. And I'll bounce around from all different things, or the mindset, I'll get so deflated by not seeing those results that what happens is I start to avoid things, or I'll get slack on my personal habits. So really working hard on the habits, creating a formula and a guide, like if you think of like bowling, you have like gutter rails so your ball doesn't go off into the thing. The habits that you have throughout the day are really those guardrails to keep you from falling off into the deep end, into that abyss of avoiding and like not doing the things on your to-do list, or even just getting discouraged and performing half-ass. So for me, it's exercise, it's gym, it's eating well, it's maintaining supportive relationships, and just making sure that I do everything on my to-do list. These are the things that just, no matter what, like keep me going and keeping me confident. I think the other thing I've learned would be I have a lot of passion. I have a lot of ability to tell a story. And the more that I hone that, the more that I practice that, the better it gets. And so the practice is the other part. So I'm doing all these podcast interviews. The podcasting has been one of the most powerful things. What this allows me to do is it's repetition for crafting the story and leaning into this strength that I have, which is passion for telling the good story and inspiring people. So the more that I do that, then it becomes an even bigger strength. And so the repetition is the other, right? So making sure you have the guardrails, setting up some repetition so that you can grow the skills that you have. And I think the other is just an appreciation for aesthetic quality. This is something that I've working for other people, it's always been kind of like, let me just do the bare minimum to get the job done. But now that it's my baby, I'm able to put a level of aestheticness that showcase. I'm an artist. I love cool visuals. I'm a designer. I love to have things flow and make sense. So when I put something out to the world, I'm giving myself that extra time to really elevate everything, every single thing that I do, and put that creativity, put that artistic spin on it. And those are some of the, I think the top three.
That's awesome to hear. And so we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, and we've, been discussing it throughout. So tell us more about the Big Possible and the type of work that you all do.
So the Big Possible ultimately is a social club for entrepreneurs and innovators, artists, a place where we host retreats around the world, 4-day experiences with luxury accommodations. We'll have like TED style speakers. And the whole mission behind it is to help people play at the biggest level they're capable of, to find the courage to take the big risks, to find the community who can connect the dots for them from wherever they're at right now to actually achieve whatever their big vision is. And that community comes in the form of both mentors and guidance, as well as connections, right? And then finally, just the opportunity to think expansively. So often we get in a rut because we're seeing the same homogenous ideas, we're seeing the same environment. And by getting out to a cool environment, networking with people who have divergent thinking, now we're able to open the door to new ideas. And then by having the support of a community, you're able to not just have those ideas, but then have the playbook to actually attain them. So the core business is we do retreats for entrepreneurs. We'll do about 1 a quarter right now. The next one's happening in Tulum. We just finished 2 incredible experiences in Morocco and Puerto Vallarta. And now we're also adding in, we have support like masterminds. We have a mastermind happening tomorrow. And this is basically where all the members can come every month. We have speakers come in and we're sharing ideas. We're sharing our wins. We're sharing our roadblocks. And we're working through each and every member's business to make sure that they have what they need to thrive. And then finally, we do some coaching as well. So we have a program where we do agency style graphic design, video editing, marketing, plus one-on-one coaching. So these are all the components, but it's all designed to really just shortcut the path from wherever you're at right now to that dream level that maybe you've been afraid to reach for, maybe that you just feel this aching desire to live a life at this level, but you don't know how to get there. The Big Possible really is the container in which that you can use to find that path and the support so that you don't burn out along the way.
Oh, that's awesome. And now from a volume standpoint, the retreat business, how did some of the shutdowns and things impact the business at all? And what type of industries, or at least the people from respective industries, can we find, or do you find yourself, working with the most?
Yeah, it's the worst time to start a retreat business for sure. This is the absolute worst. So people are hesitant to travel. People, especially my types of customers, they're big thinkers, they're doers, they're entrepreneurs, and they're leaders. These people are busy. These people have lives. They're in the middle of running a business. They have families. They have weddings to go to. And when you create something that is both time bound, it's locked into a specific date, and it has a destination involved where someone has to get on a 10-hour flight. They have to leave their job for 5 days to be there, and maybe be disconnected from the internet so they can focus on the experiences. That's a big ask. So, that's, and then obviously like the COVID shutdowns things. That's why I do Mexico. It's the best place to bring people. We did Morocco and they had a vaccine mandate. So like talk about resistance for people to show up. And these are the challenges that I'm discovering. Like building a travel business is hard. Building a travel business that's locked into specific dates is even harder. And then trying to focus on busy entrepreneurs as your customers, you're just stacking so many levels of resistance. But, I will say it's worth it. I will say that the lives that we're changing and the experiences that we're creating are so freaking incredible that it is so worth it. And when someone gets it, when someone is like, I see how this experience can change my life, they're a fan for life. You know, the just the tears in people's eyes when they're at these experiences alone is enough fuel for me to blast through all the obstacles and the resistance. And I'm learning so much along the way. If it was easy, I wouldn't learn so much. That's the lucky thing, right? When you have a hard business, you're forced to grow. You're forced to try new things, pivot, experiment. And this is kind of where the idea for coaching came out. I'm like, okay, I can't do, if I need like consistent cash flow, like I need to introduce some other ways in which I can have an evergreen offer. So people don't have to be locked into a time or they don't have to travel. And so this is how the coaching aspect of it came out. Same with the marketing. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I've watched a few of your videos, and it does just look like, you know, it's more than a trip, right? It's more than a trip. And how you've been describing it, you know, having that experience, you know, seeing the folks, watching some of the footage, reading your content. I think it is everything that you say it is, and likely a bit more too. And now, one of the things that, you know, we're kind of talking a little bit about the pandemic, the importance of relationships really have only been highlighted during this time. You know, a lot of us were either locked down in solitude, right? And maybe we had different pockets of folks we could connect with, but really networking was tough, right? And so when you think about what are some key steps to building that supportive circle of like-minded achievers, what does that look like for you?
Bro, this is what I live for. So there are so many things, and everything in life is about leveling up, right? You start small. Just give yourself three or four methods to reach out to people and grow your network. The easiest way to do this is to build your confidence so that when you do talk to somebody, you have a reason to talk to them. Also, while you're doing this, just throughout every interaction, just remember this. Everyone is human. Everyone wants connections. When you're approaching somebody, think of your ask as a gift. Think of your experience as a gift. And so that way you can reframe rejection as they're just not ready right now. Don't let rejection stop you from going out there and asking for people. But if you want to increase the odds of making solid connections, start with a container that you can use to capture, we say leads, right? So capture potential networking partners. A podcast is one of the easiest ways to do this. You have a podcast and you can just interview cool people. Then you make relationships. You meet them one-on-one. You can have a magazine. You can have a blog where you interview cool people. I know a guy that does these just happy hours where he just has every Friday, he invites like 20 people. Some of them show up, some of them don't, but they're just like a virtual happy hour and people network and they get together. So the second component of that, so you have a container, something that you can use as a place to capture all of the people that you're talking to. And when you're in an interaction, say, oh, you know what? I love your story. Would love to have you on my podcast. That relationship can then either like turn into something later. There's so many ways to collaborate. You'll start to get to know them. You'll have a relationship. The other aspect then is to start hosting. Hosting can be one of the most powerful ways to build FaceTime. It also positions you as an authority. I love dinner parties. I'm doing 2 dinner parties this week here in LA, and I'll do them wherever I travel in the world. I'll do a bunch in Tulum when I'm there. And the easiest way to do that is just pick up the phone, call a restaurant, say, hey, I've got a group of 8 people. I'm going to show up on Thursday, book the table, post an Eventbrite listing, post a LinkedIn listing, then go through LinkedIn and send an invite to everybody in the city that you're hosting the event. Put a theme around it. You know, like I do entrepreneur dinners. I love talking with entrepreneurs. And then stay in touch with these people as you do it. Like stay connected with them. And I think finally, the other aspect is you don't have to be the one that's doing all of the work. There's a lot of existing networks out there that you can join. You can come join my retreat and you will instantly have like 20 lifelong partnerships with people that are like just brilliant. You could join like an online community, like, you know, there's millions of Facebook groups out there, but so infiltrate existing organizations. Allow them to do all the hard work of curating the people and finding that like-minded thought process or just the people that are playing where you want to play, and then be active in those communities. So I also love nomad lists. Again, this is like a thing for digital nomads. I love every time I go to a new city, they usually have like a group. So I'll find their WhatsApp group and I'll start messaging in there. They'll have a Facebook group. You can message in there and then use those containers that other people have built to then funnel back into your containers. So say, post something in the group. Hey, I'm throwing a dinner party. Then post something in the group. Hey, I've got a podcast. Anyone want to come be interview on the podcast? And before you know it, it's like now your network is just thriving. But the important thing is really staying in touch with a lot of these people and asking for help when you need it. So often people will avoid asking the questions because they're afraid of rejection. But really, like, go back to that first thing. We're all human. We all have needs. Everybody loves to be of service and help, especially if you already have an existing relationship. So I look at like the mentors on my team. Like every time I'm stuck on something, I text like 3 or 4 people. Hey, what do you think of this landing page? Hey, how do I get more sales? Hey, can you refer more people for me? And what are they going to say? Like, sure, yeah. Or, you know what? Hey, I'll get to this next week. Or, I'm stacked right now. I can't do it. But either way, because I ask, now I'm either going to stay exactly where I am if I don't ask, or there's a possibility that I'll actually change if I do ask. And that's, I think, the what I call like the bulletproof guide to to landing some powerful professional relationships. And you just do 10% of that, even you're going to be making significant improvement to whatever you're doing. So you don't have to do all of that right off the bat, but if you just approach it with that system or that formula and just do even 10%, it's going to serve you for a long time.
No, that's great. And, it's actually a great transition into, a lot of the guests that I bring on, all the guests that I bring on, I love for them to share their advice for others. Right. And I think that was a nice kind of appetizer for this section. And, when we think about someone who wants to develop a big vision, if you will, what are some steps that someone should take to develop that big vision?
It starts with the questions that you ask. And the first thing that I would recommend is to pull out a paper. I'm actually putting together a planner for this. It's called the Play Big Planner. And that should be ready like maybe in about 30 days or something. But the first questions you really want to ask are, one around the life that you're living. If you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? This is something else that I freaking love this question. What pisses you off about the world? What would you use your last dying breath to, if you had a cause to fight for? It doesn't matter how much gas is in the tank that's there. It doesn't matter how beat up you get. It doesn't matter if you're poor and homeless. You'll continue fighting for this cause. If you can pull something out, and maybe it's asking these questions in front of the mirror. I remember I was in a hotel in the countryside in Poland, or was it? Yeah, it was Poland. And I just remember kind of asking myself these questions to the point where, when I landed on it, I'm just sitting here looking in the mirror and the tears just start flowing out of my eyes because I'm so passionate about helping innovators who got screwed by circumstance figure out a way to get unstuck and thrive. I look at all the decades of me being stuck, trying to make this work, trying to get to the point. I know I have so much more to give to the world. And I absolutely hate the fact that there are so many innovators who are living like beneath their potential because of whatever fear or mindset is happening, that they're not able to tap into that. Maybe it's the choices they made. Maybe they just got the short stick in like growing up poor. But you look at so many people who have made that big change. I just had an interview with Clinton Sparks on my podcast, and this guy, he grew up. He was abused for many years of his childhood. He was a criminal. He was in and out of jail. And what he did is he became like a multi-Grammy award-winning songwriter. The dude is just living life super powerfully. And the thing he says that does it for him is because he cares. Everything he does, every day he shows up, he cares about what he's doing. And if we can find that, by asking the questions, what do I really, really care about? Enough that I'm gonna fight for it. That's the first step. Then the other step is to have a process so that you're able to continuously reflect on this as you go. Every single day you write in your journal, am I acting towards this vision? What do I need to do to go to bed at the end of tonight to feel damn proud of the work I did? What will I do if I get discouraged or I lose motivation? And if you predict every single day and you remind yourself of the importance of the mission that you're living for, then what happens is you're going to be more capable to sidestep the mistakes and weather the storms of life, and congratulate yourself along the way, right? Remember that you're still making progress. Every single day that you're showing up to tackle this vision, you're gaining skills, you're gaining momentum, you're gaining courage. And I think that's really, if we can even just do that 5 days out of 10, there's so much value is going to happen. And it's all about course correcting. You're not going to go in a straight line, but you have a Waze map, you have a navigation, and sometimes you miss the turn. That's okay. It's going to reroute you to go back to the end result. And you just need to stay in the car, keep your foot on the gas pedal, and it's okay if you get lost here and there. Just get back on the horse and get back in the saddle, get back in the driver's seat, and keep going.
No, I like that. And that's also too, like you said, answering those questions for yourself really helps you kind of build that connection too, to having more meaningful work. Cause now you actually care, right? And you can demonstrate that. So I love to hear that. And now kind of flipping it a little bit, what more do you think, let's say, employers could be doing? Because, when we think about what's happening now in this space, and a lot of people are really looking for something, right? But what more can employers do to better support employees during this time?
Yeah, you think about employees right now are probably the more disengaged than they've ever been. And a lot of that comes from ADHD, unhappiness, distraction. And so if you can align your company to fit the passions around your employees and get to know them on a personal level, so much you're going to see much more interaction, much more engagement. People are going to fight to be there. If you can craft that vision and let the employees know that they're a part of that vision, reward them on, when they do show up. Don't just complain, because when you start to complain, people are just going to check out. You need to actually, I just remember, I would have these meetings, and I'd have a boss that showed up and he would just be grumpy. And I would have so much fear on Sunday night, going into this Monday meeting, because I knew no matter what I did, he was going to be unhappy. And it was this and it just cascaded into all the things that I did. It was I just was I was checked out. I was I don't want to show up to this meeting anymore. And I have to take a bunch of deep breaths and get ready for it. And it just creates this toxicity. And rather than that, if you can figure out a way to find out what makes your employees passionate, what makes them super excited, and then align the projects that they're working on to fulfill those passions. So, and give them the space to come up with ideas, give them the space to express what they're feeling, whether that's in a weekly meeting. Try as much as possible to reduce judgment. No one is ever going to perform at the level that you're going to perform as an entrepreneur or the leader of the company. You need to recognize that your employees are there for a paycheck. They're there for their livelihood. They're there to also grow their skills. And you need to get into their head and figuring out what motivates them, what excites them, and then align the actions that you do as a leader so that you're not hitting them hard with judgment. Sure, when people fuck up, you need to actually you need to course correct that. But you need to think about it in a way that, how can I do this in a way that lights their motivation to perform better in the future? Think about where they want to go with their life and help them create that roadmap that, hey, by being here at this company, by doing these jobs, these are the skills that you're going to be fine tuning and growing. And I'm a resource for you to grow as well. As you grow, it's in my best interest as an employer to help you grow. So approach it with love rather than judgment, and you'll be surprised at how far that's going to take you.
That's amazing. Well, look, Noah, I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me today. I enjoyed, learning about the work you do, the clients you serve, learning about the big possible. Look, I may even I got to figure out either how to get to one of these dinners or figure out how to get to one of these retreats. So I will be following you online and would love to stay in touch, and would love for our listeners to get a chance to really, support you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing. So where can they find you?
Thebigpossible.com has just about everything. So you can go there, and I've got like everything from like guided meditations. I've got the retreats that we're doing. I've got lots of blog posts, and additionally, if you want to do the coaching, right there on the homepage, there's a spot for the coaching, and then for the retreats, thebigpossible.com/Tulum is the next one coming up, and we have several more that are in the pipeline for 2023.
Very nice. Well, all right. Well, look, I'll make sure I share that information in the show notes, and just want to say, look, that'll do it for today's episode. I want to again thank my guest, Noah Scott, for joining us today. I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Noah.
Thanks, brother.
The Great Resignation, people leaving their jobs in droves. There's a lot of buzz happening in the job market of late. Now, did you or someone you know leave your job during the pandemic and want to share your story? We've been having some really good conversations in this space. So if you're interested, I'd love to have you join the program. If so, here's how you can do it. First, you can email us at hello@whyleft.co. That's hello@whyleft.co. Or visit us online at whyleft.co. That's whyleft.co. Look forward to having you join the conversation. Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyleft.co. That's whyleft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.